thank you. Thank you for having me. Now, for those of you who don't think my name sounds very German, it's because it's not. I'm actually Norwegian. I think I have some fellow Norwegians in the audience as well. I at least heard somebody speaking Norwegian, which I get very excited when I hear people speaking Norwegian because it's like us and them. 50% of the total people in Norway are here right now, I think. But I'm very excited to be here. I'm very happy to be here. I think Ukraine and many of the countries in Eastern Europe have a great potential for electric vehicles and mobility services. One thing is of course, very cheap electricity you have here. But I'll get into that in a moment. Now, I used to work for Tesla. And I am in no way an environmental enthusiast. I've become an environmental enthusiast, but I'm very much a petrol head, a conversed petrol head, if you please. I absolutely love the sound of a V8, and I think a V10 is a masterpiece of an engineering. But that's just how I've been raised, right? I've been raised of having the association that engine speed equals performance. But for example, for my 8-year-old daughter, engine noise is just engine noise. It has nothing to do with performance. I'll share a story on that a little bit later. So the video that you saw here is supposed to do something, to present something about sustainability. It's not the most sexy topic in the world to talk about sustainability. Quite honestly, I think it's really boring sometimes to talk about it. So how to not make it boring? Well, if this works, then we will maybe make it less boring, yeah? So here's a good starting point of how you don't make sustainability boring. Electric cars have had a reputation of being, well, not the most beautiful looking cars or fastest cars. And that's something that we really took upon ourselves in Audi as well. When we go out to make an electric car, we make it as similar to what we like already, but just make it better in every way. So, but the question is, are we really ready for sustainable mobility? And by ready, I mean in a mindset, yes, of course, this is a very beautiful car, the Audi E-Tron GT, but it's also a very expensive car, and most people won't be able to afford such a car. So are we ready in terms of our mindset and also where our priorities needs to be? But we need to also look at our challenges coming up. Because our challenges right now is that there is a surge in urbanization and on-demand ownership. So people don't necessarily want to own a car anymore. I'll give an example. When I took the flight this morning from Munich, where I live, here to Lviv, I didn't take a taxi or public transportation. I opened my app and I took a car-sharing service. A car parked right outside where I live, and the airport has a parking section for those car-sharing cars, and it cost me 20 euros. And that is going to be more and more of this. I would, of course, prefer if it was an electric car that I could take, but there was not. We have a rising demand for eco-friendly propulsion. There is government restrictions. People are very occupied in being more and more environmental, and this is becoming the demand from you guys, from the customers. Affordable, easy-to-access mobility service. We want it everywhere, just with the click of a button, using our phones. And it needs to be sophisticated. We want to drive nice cars that has all the practicality and performance that we expect. There is huge uncertainties of price development on fossil fuels. Thinking back again to the oil crisis that we've been to and how this dramatically affects fuel prices. In some countries more than others. Online connected, we want to be online and connected the whole time. We constantly want to check our vehicle statuses and also being more and more linked into this world of connectivity. We want to be faster, better, longer, greener, safer. Everything that a car currently provides needs to be better and also greener, which again, we go into the technology of battery technology and so on. And we have also a huge expectancy from people who want us to deliver business as usual. A good example of that is our RS models. There's huge excitement about our Audi RS portfolio. I'm very excited about it personally. I think they're beautiful cars. Dinosaur can be fun as well to drive. But there is a high demand for these types of cars because people are either dependent on fossil fuels or they are emotionally very invested in this type of technology. And that's okay. So if we try to look at some sort of timeline of the reality of today and the future of tomorrow, we can sort of pinpoint our current portfolio of cars where they are today. And looking towards the future of tomorrow, which doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow Saturday, when most of you will hopefully be hungover after the after parties tonight. But if we try to look into what can we expect of the world of tomorrow, meeting the challenges that we have, then let's watch a movie about that, and then I'll keep talking afterwards.
A few years ago, we at Audi Design thought about how could the future portfolio of Audi look like. And we came up with the idea that we have additional specific designed concepts for specific use cases, in addition to our traditional portfolio. Our future customer is getting access to a fleet of different cars because of Audi On Demand. A few years ago, we presented the Audi Icon. The Audi Icon has been designed for the specific use case long-distance traveling. The Audi Icon is the perfect vehicle to drive, for example, from Munich to Hamburg. A few months later, we presented the opposite of the Audi Icon, the Audi I-Race, a car which has been designed for the very specific use case to have fun to drive, maybe on curvy roads or on a racetrack. As well, a few months later, we presented the Audi i-Me, our third use case. The Audi i-Me has been designed for the very specific use case, urban mobility, for example, for mega cities like Shanghai. The Audi i-Me is almost a third living space alongside home and work. And today we are presenting the Audi i-Trail. This is the fourth and the last member of our use case family. The Audi i-Trail is designed for the very specific use case, off-road driving. And that's why we came up with the idea to create an almost 360 view surrounding. These cars are specific designed for very specific use cases. That means our future customer is getting access to a car for his personal needs. Our design philosophy is to combine innovative technology with progressive design.
I can be the first one to say that when I first saw these concepts, I thought, maybe this is not the place for me to work after all. And but then we have to remind ourselves that that is the future of tomorrow, right? I had no idea that I would fall completely in love with a two-seater electric sports car when I started working for Tesla, because I loved cars. I loved fast cars. I loved noise. I loved sound. So we have what I call the alternative reality of today. We have to walk these steps into really get to the place. Because when I'm driving from Munich to Hamburg, I want to hold the wheel, and I want to do 250 kilometers an hour, and I want to really feel that I can kill myself in any second I want by turning the wheel, right? So, but this is how I am. Again, going back to maybe our children or people that you know that will probably want to use that time to work or watch a movie or to be very drunk when they're being driven home. That's also probably a good thing about it, right? So we take this into the steps that everyone needs to go through. So the alternative reality of today, we have these cars that one of them you can see and test drive here today. It's the Audi E-Tron. We will very soon at the LA Motor Show, present the Sportback of this car, and then we go into the other car that you see, the blue one there, which is called the E-Tron Q4 concept. And then we have the GT, or actually the other way around. We'll get the GT first and then Q4 E-Tron. So this is more relatable to people. It's easier to sort of accept these cars, right? And in order to understand this, we need to really dig into the fact of how do we get somebody to go from a Q8 diesel or a SQ8 or this raw combustion power car into something completely different. First of all, why should you do it? Is it to save the polar bears? I'm sure me and my friends from Norway would be very happy that they stay white and not brown. Or is it to help this Greta Thunberg go back to school and stop striking? Yeah, yes, please. I think that the motivation of environmental is a beautiful thing, but honestly, most people don't care. It's sad to say, but most people are not as attentive and concerned about the environment as they should be. So we just have to make sure that going electric is better because it's electric. It should be as simple as that, and that means we have to explain it, and this is something I often struggle to do with people that was interested in Tesla and are now interested in Audi. We need to make them realize that this car is actually, it satisfies your every need and even does it better. I'll give you an example using things that I loved to play with when I was a kid, or actually I still like to play with Lego. It can be very simplified explained. Now, I asked my two daughters, I have one 8-year-old and one 13-year-old, I asked them to build me 2 cars in Lego. One electric and one combustion. Just the look of it, not actually build the car. That would be amazing if they could do that, but they can't. So I asked them to build these 2 cars, and I didn't give them any guidance or anything. I just said, make sure one of them is electric and one of them is a combustion car. And this is what they created. I think you can guess which one is what, right? So the first thing I noticed is that why is the combustion one, the gray and black one, why is that so bulky? And they said, well, they're usually very big and loud and have weird shapes, and they have these exhaust pipes and all these ventilations, and yeah, they look very, very powerful. And then, okay, but what about this little white thing? Well, it's supposed to look very sleek. It looks like a fish. That was my 8-year-old's response. And then they built the front trunk, the frunk, as many people call it, because it's practical. You don't need to have a motor in there or an engine. And I asked, of course, my 8-year-old was the one who put the pink lights on the car. I asked her why, and she said, well, Dad, it's because it has to be beautiful. So it's as simple as that, right? But carrying on that thought of Lego, and this is the mind of children, which is quite beautiful in terms of explaining how an electric car is and the physics of an electric car without being an engineer. So, first of all, if you have a collision in an electric car, a normal car, you have a big block of 400, 500, 600 kilos in front of you of aluminum and steel and metal that goes where in a crash? Well, it goes straight into your legs. Or there's a lot of great designs on cars that make this block of metal, the engine, goes otherwhere than into the compartment, of course, but it's the rule of physics, right? So the moment you can reduce the size of the motor, which is what an electric engine is, then you have more what we call crumple zone, empty space, that you can construct to absorb the collision so that nothing goes into the compartment. That's the first and most important feature. So the motor of the E-Tron is less than 30% the size of a V6 TDI. Secondly, we have a battery in the floor. And going back to the Lego assumption again, if you ever built Lego and you were like me and built a car, you started off with a frame, right? What happened if you didn't put anything underneath this frame. You know, it wouldn't stay apart. It would be very wobbly, right? And if you put something in it, and especially if you put a solid block of something solid in it, you can even drop it on the floor and it would stay intact. So to have the battery in the floor is more, I would say, about safety than about performance. Yes, you get a low center of gravity. It's great for handling. Car cannot tip over quite easily as well, but it makes the chassis extremely rigid and very safe for especially side collision impact. And in the back, there's no need for a petrol or diesel tank. So again, emptiness, crumple zone, absorbing collision power, and of course, practicality. You can utilize that space for luggage or even third row seats. And then the result is what we've created with E-Tron first. And I don't like to do a lot of, look at us, we're so good, because there's a lot of great electric cars out there. But fact is, this is from articles, third-party articles, not ourselves. E-Tron was the first all-electric car that got the international safety standard for the highest one, top rating. So it's an extremely safe car, again, very much because of the crumple zones, the battery in the floor, and this is a general constructional idea for all-electric cars. And also, it is the benchmark for fast DC charging. Now that the Porsche Taycan is here, it charges even faster. But that is also quite a significant point for people wanting to transition into electric. You don't want to wait hours to charge. But most importantly, people are motivated by one thing, and one thing only in their decisions, mostly, and that's money. Right? If ever we want to buy something, we want to get as much value for the money as possible. And this, I had to check these numbers over and over again because I was kind of envious of the fact that Ukraine has such low prices in what I'm going to talk about now. First of all, a liter of diesel here in Ukraine costs an equivalent of 1.1 euro. And if you have, and bear with me on this little bit of math here, if you have a car that uses half a liter per 10 kilometers, we all agree that you can travel then 20 kilometers on 1 liter of diesel, right? So far, so good. Now, instead of talking about how much range does this car have and how fast does it charge to fill up the tank, it doesn't really, unless you drive 400 kilometers every single time you get in the car, doesn't really matter to talk about that. The direct comparison should be how much does it cost to drive the exact same distance with an electric car, and in this case, the Audi E-Tron. Now, again, bear with me a little bit because we have to do a little bit of math. It's a little bit hard to see here, but 237 watt-hours per kilometer. That's the liters per kilometer term when you talk about electric cars. So if you then have 237 watt-hours per kilometer times 20 kilometers, that means that this car will consume 4.74 kilowatt-hours to drive 20 kilometers. Now, here's the fun part. The average electricity cost in Ukraine is like 1/4 of what it is in Germany. So here's 0.06, and I thought it was a mistake, so I had to check it quite some times. But that means that it's going to cost you 0.3 euros to drive the same distance with an electric car. And be aware that studies show that you are very likely to spend less than 50% of the charging at your own household. Again, I'll give you an example. If you go to the airport, they usually have dedicated parking for electric vehicles, right? Do you pay anything more to park there than you would your diesel car? No, because then that means the electricity is for free. And that's the point. Electricity is actually the only fuel that you can get for free, unless you brew your own diesel or petrol in your house, which I wouldn't recommend. But now, this is a huge motivation for people, and it was a huge motivation for me, of course. But we have to consider the most important thing here, which is the customer. And that's why I've tried to create this map, because I think, myself and many others can identify with this map here, because you have customers that are very E-ready, like ready to go electric, and you have people that are very fossil dependent, either on their mindset or because they live a place where they actually can't charge their car, and they drive long distances every day, and we have to be aware of that. And you have the traditional mindset and the traditional products, and you have the alternative ones. And this, of course, goes into the product life cycles of people being ambassadors and early adapters and majorities and stuff like that. But if we try to put our current products into this map, it's going to look something like this. The E-Trons, full electric cars, are, of course, very alternative way of thinking about mobility. And it's definitely for people that are ready to go fully electric, right? And then you have the other side of my personality, at least, people that are very attached to petrol, power, sound, V10, V8s, very traditional, typical RS customers. And then you have people who are absolutely dependent on driving a diesel car, for example, a Q7 or a Q5, because they live at a place, again, where they can't charge, or they drive long distances, or they just have a mindset of, I'm not ready for this. And then you have people that are a little bit ready, but not completely ready, where you have the plug-in hybrids. And in this case, the Audi A3 plug-in hybrid and the Q5 plug-in hybrid. Now, one of our biggest challenges is that we have to make sure that the E-Trons appear as traditional as possible, because if they are too out there, we go back to the video I've shown, people are going to be like, that's not the future I want right now. So we have to take this in baby steps. But we also have to satisfy mobility on demand for these type of cars. Many don't want to own one or can't own one, but they definitely want to use it when they have the need for it. And then we have a section right here as well. We have people that need to use mobility on demand that can't drive electric, they need fossil cars. So we have to push these cars into that segment and offer that as well. So then you go into a very big complexity of how we need to reposition our products and reposition our brands to satisfy every segment of customer. And this is one of the four pillars that we have in Audi now, where we are consistently thinking about the customer. The other one is consistently thinking electric. Make no doubt, electric is the future, not just of Audi, but of the Volkswagen, the entire Volkswagen group. Yes, even Lamborghini and Bentley and all these guys. It's tough talking to my colleagues in Lamborghini, but they've made the first step. They presented the Sian at the Frankfurt Motor Show, which is a supercapacitor supercar, so it's a baby step, but it's still something that would be out of the question for them to do just like 3-5 years ago, right? We are very much spearheading this in Audi, and we will have at least committed to having 5 models in the market by end of next year. That means 2 versions of the E-Tron and the E-Tron Sportback, and of course the beautiful GT. And then we go into 2021, we will get the Q4 concept into reality, and 14 other models that we are dying to show you. I'm not going to do it right now, because then I won't have a job on Monday, but it's going to be full electric car in every single segment and price. But we can't stop there. We have to be connected. So we do mobility on demand, functions on demand, everything through My Audi app. In the car that you buy, you can upgrade it with functions for a day, for a week, for a month, for a lifetime. Everything from, I'm going into a dark forest now and I need some more lights on the car, or I want to upgrade these assistant packages because I'm driving a long distance journey and I don't want to hold the steering wheel for the most part. So things like this is going to be more and more integrated in the cars already by the end of this year, actually. Always online. I know that for my e-tron, for my electric cars, I check the car. I check it because I think I have a light case of Alzheimer's. I forget that I locked the car, so I have to go into the app and double check that I actually locked it. And I want to check the charging limit, if somebody, does the car still charge? So I always want to be connected to the car. And then we have the most sexy topic again, sustainability. It's important because an electric car is not environmental free, or it's not fully green. We have to make sure that we build it neutrally and also fuel it neutrally, right? So, like I showed you in the beginning, our factory where we build the E-Tron is 100% CO2 neutral, and that's not something we decided. I don't think people is going to listen to what Volkswagen Group or Audi says about sustainability. We have to show it. So the Brussels factory is CO2 neutral and is certificated by a third party that does these certifications. Now, our Győr factory in Hungary will be CO2 neutral by end of next year. In fact, all our heat supply in German sites come from biogas. All factories in the entire Volkswagen Group will be CO2 neutral by 2025, and all factories are already running on renewable energy, green energy. And further measures is going to be, of course, water resources being used, and everything we can recycle, we will recycle. And not just us, but also our sub-suppliers. So it's a full circle commitment of not just presenting green cars, but also building them and making sure that you can charge them in the same way. Now, our market positioning, and this is of course something that I'm not in charge of, but I like it either way. We want to be a progressive premium brand. Like, we want to be in the forefront, we want to fight the battles, and of course we want to make mistakes, because that's how you learn. We present something to you and a concept, and everyone says, "Nah, that's not really what I want," then of course you need to scrap that and you need to do something else. We want to focus on customer experience and be very exciting about our innovations, perhaps too exciting sometimes, but of course stunning design is deep, deep in the Audi DNA. So with that said, I'm going to open the floodgates for questions. That's always the fun part. But please, I welcome you guys to ask me some questions if you have any. There's one behind there, I think. Unless there's something wrong with your arm. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So my question is next. Could you please provide some estimates when we will have either a really fast chargeable source of power or batteries that will have much more performance that's currently on the market? Thank you.
Okay, so what I understood from your question is that you wanted to know when we have ultra fast charging and also when we have batteries that can take that type of charging and also deliver a high peak output of energy that make the car go even faster. That was the question, I guess?
At least one of the problems. As for now, electric cars will be much more popular in case if at least one of those two problems will be solved.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I don't necessarily see it as a problem. I see it as an educational challenge. Yes, we need to make sure the car can charge fast, but with the current technology we use in the cars, if you try to charge the car even faster than let's say 250 to 300 kilowatt hours, with the current battery cells we use, you're going to frag the battery pack, basically just fry the battery pack. And that's, of course, going to affect the long life of the battery. If you're talking about going into the technology of solid-state batteries and supercapacitors and these types of very technical things, then this is, of course, something we are constantly working on in our R&D departments. Together with our colleagues from the entire group. And a good example now is the step that we did with the Porsche Taycan and that we will do with the e-tron GT. We will increase the charging even further to up to 350 kilowatt. That basically means you can get 200 kilometers of range by having an 8-minute charging stop. And I don't know how big your bladder is, but if you have a long distance, then try to time yourself the next time you stop to have a quick toilet visit, number one, not number two. You will probably realize that 8 minutes go by pretty quickly. So I think we're already at this stage, and currently the technology to be even faster than that, I personally don't think is necessary right now. but it's definitely there, but that technology is too expensive at the moment. I think we had a question there, yeah?
Thank you. My question is also related to batteries, essentially. What is the position Audi has, for example, right now, regarding the specific rare ores embedded in batteries, for example, cobalt and others? How they plan, for example, to maybe minimize their use basis on reducing or even removing these rare ores for batteries for ecological measures, or even logistical ones. There is not enough for everyone. Yep. And that leads me to if Audi plans to do like other businesses, for example, Apple, which says that in the future they won't need to even mine these ores, just recycle what is already there in old iPhones and so on. So maybe Audi is also planning doing something like that or something completely different. Mm-hmm. I would like to know a bit your opinion or...
Yep. So for those that didn't get his question, first part was the sensitive elements that goes into the production of batteries, like the cobalt, for example, which is, I suppose you're referring to the Congo situation. The other thing is going into, is Audi or Volkswagen going to take control of mining and producing batteries ourselves? And the answer is yes to both. We're going to reduce the amount of unique materials in batteries, and we have extremely strict guidelines with all our suppliers, where the reduction of these type of materials is very, very, very strict. You will not be able to be a supplier of Volkswagen or Audi unless you fulfill the requirements, and human rights, of course, is on top of that list. When it comes to creating our own batteries or owning that operation ourselves, it's an excellent question because it's crucially important. Right now, we are under the mercy of many of the Korean manufacturers and Chinese manufacturers in terms of batteries. And it's only a matter of time before their priorities is, of course, going to be with their own home brands. So we made a measure on that in May this year, where we actually invested 900 million euros in a Swedish company. I wish it was a Norwegian company, but unfortunately, we don't have that type of knowledge in Norway. We can build boats, not cars. So we invested heavily in that company, and they are a company called Northvolt that actually produces and do R&D on what you're talking about. So we secured 20% of that company, and it's like 10% of the total volume that we're going to see in 2030. So it was a significant investment to take that strategic step into owning our own mining and production of batteries.
I have also two questions. First of all, are there any plans to develop some charging networks, for example, like Tesla superchargers, like from inside of from Audi side? And another question is from Audi data, which markets are most interesting for you from to sell cars? Which markets are mostly ready for electric cars?
Fast charging, we already are building up now with a partner called Ionity. This was a result of a joint venture between several brands, both BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Hyundai, Ford, went together and said we have to build the fast charging network so we can offer the same thing that Tesla does with their superchargers. So that was the birth of Ionity, and there are now over, I think, 120 charging locations on Ionity. I've used several of them myself several times. And for example, I recently did a trip from Oslo, where I'm from, to Venice, Italy, with my family, just using nothing but Ionity charging. And it was in many of the cases, we were not charging more than 25 minutes even. And the car was ready to go before we were. You know, when you have kids, it takes time. So we have built it up, and we are consistently doing so. The second part of your question was?
Which markets are ready?
Oh yeah, the e-ready markets. Of course, the e-ready markets is highly right now dependent on how the government are pushing their green strategies. I'm very happy that Ukraine is in the forefront of that by, for example, removing VAT on full electric cars. Norway, where I'm from, has of course been very proactive in this type of measurements. But in terms of volume, we see that China and US are really pushing the volumes of electric cars. But we need markets like Ukraine, like Norway, like Sweden to be on the forefront of doing things that can work for everyone. Yep.
Thank you very much, Kjell, for your insights. Could you elaborate a little bit more about the business model? I was shocked a little bit that you want to charge for self-driving in the future. Is it true?
That we want to charge for?
For the self-driving mechanism, switch it on and you need to pay?
Oh yeah, because, well, you can, the functions of self-driving or assistant packages is something that you might not need every day. Maybe your normal daily driving is just in the city, and then one weekend you want to take a long trip. So you can then subscribe to these things without committing to owning them full time by activating it for a day or a week or a month. Or you can choose to buy it permanently if you, for example, have a different driving pattern. So it's basically an offering that many people have requested, and also something that brings the interesting to leasing. Because in leasing, it's always the price of a car, and then to get it as low as possible. So if you can add on features afterwards or temporary in these type of situations, then you open up for a bigger audience.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. May I ask my question? Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. To be super honest with you, I'm Audi fan, yeah, owning A6 actually.
Ah, cool.
So,
I'm a fan too.
So it's pretty cool seeing Audi in top of competing with such giants like Mercedes and BMW, you know, and you are the best guys.
Thank you.
So, on the other hand, it's big respect for you going green. However, how to stay financially competitive with other manufacturers going green in such way? Thank you.
It's a great question. The technology that is put into an electric car is, of course, a lot more expensive than that of an A6 diesel or petrol. And that is a challenge for us to accept the fact that we have to at some point accept that we will make less money per car. And that is a very tough one to accept for my colleagues in the financial department. But it is true. There is a good reason why Tesla is losing money and has been for a long time, because it is necessary to push the development of the technology to become cheaper so that we can have the margins. But rest assured, we have spent over 5 years developing the Audi E-Tron precisely because of this reason. And this is part of the main reason I accepted working for Audi. It's not a compliance car. It's not, okay, now we've done the e-tron, now done. Now let's do some more RS models. The investments that's been done has been on manufacturing, on retooling, on research and development, so that we can push other models in the wake of this car. And that means we have to make money on the car. That goes without saying. We are a car company and we build cars. That's how we make money, and to offer other models. So, but yes, it's a painful way to get there. But we will not let that affect the customers. So we will not, tweak up the prices just because we're going to have our margins. That's not the way that we're going to do business. We're going to have the margins because we want to present cheaper cars and better technology. And also follow up on that is the MEB platform of Volkswagen Group is something that that is really lowering the investment needs and the price in the end of many customers. So you can use one modular platform on several brands. So as you probably know, the Porsche Taycan and the e-tron GT, they share a platform and many of the components. So does the Q4 with the ID family, and we're going to move into that shared platform strategy more and more, just so we can keep the prices low. Easy to forget people in the back. Then.
Okay, yes. Hello, my name is Alex, and I have a question. Could you please tell from Audi side, so is it better to take like a base of already existing car and make it EV and sell, or it's better to make a new one from the scratch? So which is which will be like the best way in, I mean, for the final product and for the cost for it? Thank you.
For the cost, definitely to use an existing platform. For the customer, not so much, because the platform, for example, for a A6, if we want to take that platform, is constructed for a very different drivetrain. You know, you have to make room for a big bulky engine in the front. You have to have the transmission in the tunnel between, and then technology in the back to power the quattro systems. So there's a lot of space there that doesn't need to be occupied with the electric drivetrain, and that affects safety. So bad for the customer, and it affects costs, of course. And practicality. You know, there's a reason why the E-Tron and many of the cars have a complete flat floor in the back, because you don't need to have the transmission in between, or the gear selectors in between. It's not necessary because it's electric. You can have a wire that does the same trick. So that's why it takes a lot of time to present these different models, because they're built from the ground up as fully electric. And we will continue doing that. Again, with the Meb Platform of our Volkswagen Group company, it's going to be the platform that we use most of our cars on, simply because it provides the best cost efficiency for us and the best safety and practicality for customers. I think we have 1.5 minutes left. Is there anybody else? I'm going to be here afterwards as well, so feel free to attack me afterwards. Not physically, but...
Hey, my name is Andrei, and yeah, probably the most interesting question for me is the reliability of cars. So while I'm driving, for example, in the mountains, it's winter and it's actually range decreased because it's winter.
Yep.
It's very unclear right now for the customer how much reliable it will be, how big range will be, for example, in the winter time.
That's a great question to ask a Norwegian. What you think is cold, I call summer. Actually, the technology that we use in batteries now, which is called lithium-ion, are better off being cold than warm. So heat is the worst thing for a battery. And also, when you are in cold climates, the consumption is, of course, higher. That's the case with every car. If you have a diesel car or petrol car, your consumption is higher when it's cold. But the good thing is that it is less things that needs to be kept warm on an electric car than on a combustion car. A combustion car has to have a temperature of 80-90 degrees to function optimally, or else it will, if it's too cold, it will dramatically affect the wear and tear of the car. The motor of an electric car is one spinning part, one moving part. It's usually stator rotor technology. And you have that in comparison with a big V6 or a V8 with a lot of moving parts. So the wear and tear of an electric motor is far, far less, which is good for the customer, bad for us because we don't make as much money on servicing the car. But in terms of durability, and a diesel-powered motor will go for 400,000 maybe, 450, 300,000, depends on the usage, while an electric motor can easily go 1 million kilometers on the same level of servicing and use. So, and cold climates are better for an electric technology than a combustion car. I've done a lot of testing on range, and for example, I drove from Zurich to Munich with my Audi E-Tron this last winter, and it's 319 kilometers, and it's usually highway driving the whole time, and that was no problem at all. So yes, the range is affected, but not as much as you might think.
Okay, I think we are out of time.
Right. Thank you, guys, and please feel free to come up to me.